Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, babies, babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. Everybody's all excited, everyone. Hi everyone. Everybody's excited. Hi everyone. What's going on? What's going on?
Not much.
You know, it's just like, just all those months where I'm sitting there going, they're gonna take him, right? Like how they not gonna take him turned out to be the case. How about that one last night? Not just that they took Jayden Daniels, but Adam Peters basically going, we've known for a while, and had us chasing our tails for a few weeks going, they're not going to take J.J. McCarthy, are they? Like, they're not going to really do that, are they? So they landed where I thought they'd land. You turn on the tape, as Dan Quinn and Adam Peters like to put it, he can suck the soul out of a defense. How you going to turn that down?
That's right.
Right? How you going to turn that down?
I believe he was asked about it. I don't remember where I saw the quote. I think maybe Ben asked him about it, basically saying, how did you keep this a secret? And he was like, I don't know. I think everyone just really cares about what we were about to do, so nobody said anything, which I think is like, I don't know, not to say that it wasn't planned that way, but the fact that it didn't leak, I mean, that's dawn of a new day continues with the organization.
It is dawn of a new day.
Because you're right. It was everyone yelling at each other because there was no new information for 2 months, essentially. So
it was funny, like, Adam Peters didn't want to say this was an easy decision because that would be dismissive of the other, draftable quarterbacks who, both went in the top 10 and are both really good prospects in their own right. But I've kind of felt this way all along without knowing him. This was not a hard choice if you just went off of the player. He gives the team a level of elite athleticism that the other two just don't have.
Yep.
And I don't know how you would, in the end, turn that down. And it was too good to turn down. I did have a chance to speak with Dan Quinn last night after the shows we were taping with the Commanders. He's over the moon. Like, I know he hasn't done any media stuff yet, but and why wouldn't he be? Because here's a defensive coach who looks at this and goes, this guy's an explosive play away from giving us a lead or giving us a comeback or doing these things that put us in a better position to do what we do. So, hopefully he's going to be the X factor that they expect him to be. He clearly is the most athletic, and eclectic type of quarterback that we've had since RG3, where he has this ability that is different than most players. He can use his legs. I did think it was interesting today. I think we just played the press conference, right? So, where he said, like, who did you follow? Who'd you watch? And he said Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson. And I almost wanted to like turn around and say, those are unique players, like extremely unique players that are different than just about any other quarterback. Is that how you view yourself? Do you want to, quote, change the game? I think like people looked at the quarterback position differently after Michael Vick entered because of the abilities that he had running and throwing. Lamar Jackson, Mel Kiper was saying for months, he can't be a quarterback. He'll never be a quarterback. He's going to be a running back, a receiver. He's going to be in the NFL, but he can't be a quarterback. And, he's turned himself into an MVP, as a quarterback, but he does it in his own way. There's nobody like him. He's also a very gifted athlete. I wonder how Jayden Daniels sees himself as he walks into this, because the people he names are extremely unique players. So, I mean, I'm hoping we have an extremely unique player who's going to be the quarterback of the Commanders moving forward.
No, of course. And the guys you just named too, I'd settled into this in the last week or so of, if it was close between him and any of the other ones, I thought he was the outright winner because you want to reinvigorate the fan base. You want eyeballs on your team. He's going to do eye-popping things that the other two guys that were available strictly couldn't do. Like, period. There was no chance they could do some of the things he did. And I had settled in on, you know what? I think even if the other two guys were close, I even think, Harris and Quinn and Peters would all probably come to the consensus of, that guy is going to reinvigorate this fan base in a way we haven't seen in a while. We were joking about it this week about how RG3 had one good season here, and look at what that pandemonium was like. Everyone forgot about everything for a year, essentially. Not to say that it was as bad as it was in the last few years with Snyder, but essentially that's what they're banking on. That it's such a crazy type of player that you can't look away. That's exactly what they want right now to kind of jumpstart this next iteration of this franchise, essentially.
He's also, and this is near and dear to my heart, he's process oriented. That, he wants to put the work in to get better. He's not just relying on pure athleticism. The reason why he took the jump that he did, he talked about this in the press conference, was he basically credited LSU. And he said, I had stability around me. I had really good coaches. He acknowledges he had 2 first-round receivers that were on his team. So he had a really good team, obviously, as well. And he even acknowledged, we knew we'd be good. We didn't know how good we would be. But he's the guy who basically says, I have a work ethic. This is important to me. I'm going to do whatever it is going to make me better, whether it's Oculus and VR that we've heard a lot about, or the coaches saying he shows up before everybody else, sometimes 4 a.m, sometimes 5 a.m. We got to kick him out of the building. It's important to him. And I loved when he said, because someone asked him, are you ready to be an NFL quarterback? And he says, I haven't even seen the playbook yet. So he's clearly and wisely confident. He should be. He's we went through all the notes last night to get ready to do a draft show. He's the 6th player since 2000, so a quarter century, to have 40-plus touchdown passes, 10-plus touchdown runs in a single season. So he had season for the ages that very, very, very few people have. When asked how he sucks the soul out of people, he pointed to this one game, and he said, go watch 2023 Florida.
Yep.
He had 600 yards of offense in that game. He was completely, literally unstoppable. He was the epitome of a Madden player. That's Michael Vick. We saw those moments with Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson, the 2 people he named, in college, doing things to these other teams where it looks as if they shouldn't be on the field with them. And he did it against Florida, an SEC team who at times has been ranked in recent years. So with players they had players that got drafted last night in the first round. So it's there. And I love the process oriented part of it, and him humble enough to at least outwardly say, I don't know if I'm going to start or not. I haven't even seen the playbook yet. He's not walking in here feeling like he's entitled to anything. And I believe it. I think that every week is a process week. I need to put in the work. Preparation is everything. And that matters here too. Is he a good person? Is he a great player? And does he care? And does he want to get better? And he seems to check off all of these boxes to a degree that, I'm beyond optimistic, and is the person who's going to, it was funny. Someone texted me last night. They were like, get out your thesaurus. You're going to have to come up with some new adjectives, because how do you describe this? Because he's going to do things that we're unaccustomed to seeing. And hopefully a lot of these things are going to lead to wins. And I'll tell you what, I think I've been talking to everybody for the last 24 hours, bare minimum, he's going to be fun to watch. This team is going to be fun to watch. Is this bare minimum? This is going to be fun. And, and then we'll see. Does he become a great NFL quarterback? We'll see. And if he does, then this will be the moment that everything literally changed on the field.
No, to your point, I would be very intrigued to see what season tickets look like over the next 3 months and then leading into the season, or even seeing those first couple games. You and I talk about it all the time. RG3 had an amazing year, but it was that first game that really made everyone go, whoa, we didn't think he was going to be this, I will be very interested to see that if he comes out like gangbusters like that, which, by the way, is heavy expectations. I'm not going to put that on him, but I think that's the next thing here is how far does his reach go and how fast does it go? Because I'm envisioning what you and I have joked about for years around here. I literally talked about it yesterday, where I live next to a park from my apartment in Bethesda, and I take walks all the time around that park. And I always see kids in your typical jerseys, Steph Curry, Lamar Jackson, Westbrook. You see just the normal ones. And I'm going, Jayden Daniels could be that next one. If he does what we think he's capable of, that is literally what's going to happen, and you can't turn away from it. And I think that's exactly what this franchise needs, because you know what? There are people that we haven't really touched on it because we've been talking about the draft so much, but there are still the people that are, I'm not coming back till they're the Redskins again, and those types of people and whatever. If a player like that is on the team, it doesn't matter what the F they're named. You can't turn away from someone that could be as dynamic as him, and that's what I think they're really banking on here with him.
We did have it for 1 year with RG3, where we had this electric athlete.
And we're still feeling
who's
it.
Capable. Yes. And this is why, to me, it was never a hard decision. Like I think Drake May might be a very good player. I don't think it'll happen now. I think he might be. And, maybe because New England doesn't have a very good team and they've got Brissett in there, probably will start this year. I bet he's starting this year.
Yep.
That they'll give him, hopefully, the requisite time. And maybe he will turn into a really good player. And I had come around to, after really watching, because once I got scared that they might not take Jayden Daniels, I started watching McCarthy and May closely because that's the decision. Yeah. And I watched McCarthy, and more when I watched him, more and more did I start to really understand what the hype was about with him. Fundamentally, he is so sound. He's got an incredible feel for the game. He feels like an elevated, maybe a little more athletic Brock Purdy. Just kind of gets it, just knows how to play, knows what he's supposed to do, knows his role, doesn't force things, isn't going to turn the ball over, is a little bigger, a little more athletic, and very fundamentally sound when you watch him with his dropbacks, which is what you don't see with May, which I think is why people are talking about he's going to take some time to get his mechanics right. McCarthy doesn't have that. And I'm watching it and I'm going, I get it. I get it with McCarthy. I understand, and his record speaks for itself, and I get it. But then you turn on Jayden Daniels and you go, this guy's a difference maker. And that's something that neither of these other two, maybe May will become that, but not to this degree. And I just don't think you can put a value on that. And that in the end is why I felt like it was, unless for some reason he didn't want to be here, like there was just nothing about it that screamed you should go in a different direction. Don't overthink this. Don't go Atlanta and do something crazy. Like, take what is right in front of you, which is the obvious choice. Like, really is the obvious. It was the obvious choice to me. And, like, I've been thinking about this, the last 24 hours, because I'm like watching this tape of him and you're just drooling, watching this going, if this manifests itself on Sundays, we're going to be extraordinarily exciting. And we're finally going to be the team that has the quarterback that the other teams are talking about all week. We haven't had that in years, where they talk about where the other team has to answer the questions. How do we stop this quarterback? For years, it's always been someone else. I mean, even to a degree, it's been Dak, especially when he was more mobile than he's shown in recent years. But early in his career, he's very mobile. Or Jalen Hurts, where we're just however anybody feels about whether he's a high-end quarterback, I think he's a very good one. But he's a dual threat. And that first year when he broke out, he was scary the way he was running the ball and moving. And every question was about how are you going to limit or how are you going to stop Jalen Hurts? For the first time since RG3, we have a quarterback where the other team's players are going to be asked, how do you stop that guy?
That's right.
And that is reassuring, and that's new, and that hopefully will be a difference maker if Dan Quinn and Joe Witt do what I'm assuming they're going to be able to do with some time, build a defense that can turn games upside down, because that's all they've done throughout their career is create defenses that cause mayhem, that get turnovers, that get a lot of sacks, and put your offense in a position to make a couple of plays. And then you add in someone like this who is a game breaker on any given snap, and it's a recipe for what I hope is a consistent level of we're competing, and we're in the conversation, and we're in very important December football, and the other teams in our division are looking for an answer because we got the most electric best quarterback in the division. Like, that's what I'm hoping happens. And obviously it's April. None of this has happened yet, and everybody looks good in April. Everybody does. But I feel like I've been like the whole time, the last couple of weeks, I've been nervous because I'm like sitting there watching this going, if they don't pick this guy, and this is what I'm saying to myself, if they don't pick this guy, they're going to regret it. If they don't pick this guy, they're going to regret it. If they don't pick this guy, they're going to regret it. Because even if the other two turn out to be pretty good, this guy might be Lamar, and they're not going to be that.
Yep.
They're not. And that's why I'm just so excited today. I think we've got the best prospect on the board. I will hear out some of the scouts that believe he was the best quarterback. Adam Peters went out of his way to say he was number one on our board.
Yep.
And I'm excited to have him, and I'm just excited for what Sundays are going to be like. We have a quarterback that may give us the type of electric football that we just haven't seen in a long time.
There was one thing I was disappointed in, and is that none of you guys in the media asked what number he was going to wear. Because that is a question that all the fans have, and not a single one of you said, have you had any discussions about number 5?
Don't blame me. I didn't ask a question.
I know,
as you may notice, in these scrums, I'm allowed to ask, but I typically refrain because I just don't feel like it's my place. I agree. I did see a quote Someone said Tressway was at something last night and signed something and said this might be the last time I signed 5.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know if that's. Again, I probably even shouldn't have said that because it's on Twitter and that may or may not have happened.
But I mean, also people are also throwing out there. Oh, he could take 15. And who's 15? Dax Milne, I think. So that one's an easy one where you just hand him 15. I've said this, though. In high school, Arizona State, and in LSU, though, he's rocked 5. So there isn't like a clear-cut alternate. And, of course, if you go to buy the jersey on NFL Shop, it's just a place filler with either like number 1 or double zeros or something like that. So, yeah, I'm just saying I'm slightly disappointed that, there was a lot of media there today, and no one asked him, hey, what number are you going to wear? I'm just,
We'll find out. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I'm going to play an interview. I got a chance to catch up with Adam Peters after the first round last night that aired on the Commanders program, and we'll play that after the break. So I'll get into, the other part of the draft, which is as the board fell the way it fell, I'm actually not surprised that Washington didn't trade back in, albeit I think that there was a sincere effort to do it, and we can talk in a little bit and what the ramifications are now that the draft did fall the way that it did. All the really high prospect tackles, none of them fell like into the range where I think they were trying to move up to. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But while we have a few minutes, I want to go through some of the other moments of the draft last night.
Yep.
And, Drake May going 3rd is not a surprise. I do feel like this is a classic, though. He's not ready. Their team's not that good. Are they going to be willing to be patient and go slowly with him to develop him first? Otherwise, this could get off on the wrong foot. So let's see how that's handled. Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4 was the easiest pick of the draft. Yep. I think outside. I think. Listen, I think the Patriots had a choice to make. I think they could have traded out. I think they could have taken JJ. I think they could have taken May. Any of those would have been, I think, like right answers for them. Marvin Harrison at number 4 for the Cardinals, they could argue they got the best player in the draft.
Yep.
So, I think it was a very simple choice. Joe Alt 5 to the Chargers. I love Harbaugh saying we look at offensive linemen as weapons. I think that was just an incredible, incredible line. And it was funny, like the reaction shot of him and his girlfriend looked like they had just been punched in the face, which I thought was hilarious. But anyway, they were going tackle the whole time, and so that made sense. The Giants played the okey doke, tried to pretend like they were going to take a quarterback, ended up taking Malik Neighbors, very, very good player. I'll be interested to ask Jayden when we play the Giants about him, obviously, because he spent all that time with him. Tackle to the Titans was chalk. That was obvious that was going to happen. Yep. And then we get to 8. And honestly, everybody's trying to, I think there's a lot of people that I like people like Orlovsky and others who have gone on air today, and they've come around to, they think this is some evil genius pick. And I think it's idiotic. And me, I was talking about Penix in the fall.
Yeah.
I was I like that guy. I'm like, I think that guy's got a shot to be really, really good. But they just gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed. They gave him a 4-year deal that really is only a 2-year deal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's really, but it's guaranteed 2-year deal. What are they thinking? What in the world, when they have a weak defense and they've got a defensive head coach, they could pick the best defensive player on the board, or because of where the best defensive players on the board were drafted, could have traded out considering teams wanted McCarthy or wanted Penix. I have no idea what they were thinking, and I think it's one of the most idiotic picks I've ever heard of, and it only works out if he's great. Not good, great. Yeah. He has to be great, and we're not going to see it for at least a year, if not 2, dependent on, are they now considering trading Cousins after this year or now, for that matter, which I don't think they are, but are they considering Cousins as a true short-termer? Because remember this part, is it Penix 24, 25?
He's 24. So if they were to play the contract out, he'd be 28 by the time Kirk was gone.
If they play, which clearly they're not going to.
Of course not. No. So
clearly they're not going to.
Most likely.
So they went and pissed off Cousins, who knows how to handle this stuff, before he's ever taken a snap.
Yep.
They already gave him all this money. They have so many other needs. The world is their oyster. They could trade down with these desperate teams like the Raiders or Minnesota or Denver and get a haul. They could just sit there and take the best defensive player on the board, and all of that would have made sense, and this doesn't. That's a crazy thing to do. I'm sorry. It's nuts. It's inexplicable, and I don't think it's defensible at all.
Well,
at all.
Especially, too, I thought the quote from Cousins, I think it was Rossini who had it first last night, and I thought the quote from Cousins, too, was actually – like, it meant something, because he said the reason it was, I'm not going to quote it exactly here, but basically she was saying and passing along, he signed on with Atlanta because he thought there was a chance to contend right now in 2024 and win that division. And they pulled what happened with Rodgers. Instead of drafting a player that could contribute right now while you have a quarterback that could get you on a run, you instead invested it in another quarterback, which helps nobody on the team tomorrow, essentially. And I agree with you, actually. Like, I see some people galaxy branding it. And you know what? Fine. If you get a quarterback, great. But you know what? All you did was water down whatever this team is this year. You could have gotten an impact player. And in fact, I even made the argument last night, okay, if you really liked Penix, you should have traded down and then said, you know what? If he's there at 15, we can't pass him up. Or then you take the best defensive player.
Or you got an extra first-round pick and you took a defensive player anyway. And then you're like, you know what? Like, we got our impact player now, and we just couldn't turn down Penix. It was too good to be true.
That's right.
And at that point, at least you can kind of put it out there publicly like this. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, your team is set up with Cousins to win that division. Why in the world you wouldn't go and take the best defensive player on the board? Or I could even make a case, go take a Dunze then. Go ahead.
I was going to say
load up on
Powers.
offense.
I know they have Pitts, but like
you
could have done that. Like,
I agree.
Just ramp up the offense. Like I was sitting there going, you could have taken anybody to beef up the offense, and you took him instead. It was bad.
You could have gotten the best defensive tackle on the board. You could have gotten whoever you think the best edge is on the board. You could have gotten the best corner on the board. You could have, and if you're going to do this, you trade out. You trade out because Minnesota traded up one spot and gave up picks when the team ahead of them was not going to select him.
Right. Exactly.
How crazy is that?
Right.
Like they were so desperate. You don't think you would have gotten something crazy out of them? You might have gotten both of their first-round picks out of them to move up to take McCarthy at that point, or Penix for that matter. And you didn't do it. And you would have fallen back and gotten, at bare minimum, you would have gotten best defensive player on the board and something else. And I just don't get it. I don't think you can defend it. And he better be great. But you're not going to find out for 2+ years.
Yep.
It's amazing. Or they're going to trade Cousins next year, and then everyone's going to ask him, why did you sign him in the first place?
That's right. Then you got to take a cap hit. Yeah.
Right. The Bears obviously did great.
Yep.
Caleb and Odunze, that's amazing.
That's insane.
I think JJ landed in the right spot. I mean, Kevin O'Connell's a great coach. Yep. They needed a quarterback. All's well that ends well for them. Again, they got fleeced. Like, they moved up one spot to a team that wasn't going to take J.J. McCarthy. So I guess they were scared. Denver or the Raiders are going to move up? That must have been what it was.
Yeah, I think they were afraid another team was about to swoop in.
Or the Jets were threatening it.
Yep.
So the Jets take out like bandits. They move down one spot, get the guy they want anyway, and get a couple of extra picks for it. Bo Nix is overdrafted significantly at 12. I mean, that's just nuts. Okay, that's nuts. But you know what? I'll hear out Sean Payton, great quarterback coach, gets a guy, pocket quarterback. Okay. I don't buy him as a front end starter, but that's just me, and that's just my evaluation of him.
Did you hear the story on Bo Nix of how they tested him? So what I'll say is this: is he convinced the Broncos to draft him there? I guess they handed him a folder of plays the night before, then worked out with him privately, and then he threw for an hour, and they said he was perfect, literally perfect on everything that they asked him to do. And so I'll hear you out. I'm with you. I think he was overdrafted. You could have traded down. But you know what? We've said this time and time again. If you think that's your guy, you just take him. You don't risk trading down and getting him. So it better work out, and at least you can make the argument with Peyton. Peyton, when he gets his guy, when he had Drew Brees, it was amazing, right? So no one's going to remember if he's good, but everyone will remember if he's not that good with them. So, yeah, I mean, I see the argument there.
Well, Broncos fans, when you wake up today, here's the reality, and just honest reaction. 2 times a year, it's Bo Nix versus Pat Mahomes. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
And if I told you it's Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, or even for that matter, Drake May in a year or two, you might have a different impression of it. There's no way you're sitting there going, I feel good about that.
You could throttle
today.
it back too one more time. You could say, oh, what about not instead of Mahomes, it's Herbert, right? Like you're not feeling great about that one either. So, yeah.
Let's see. 13, obviously the Raiders wanted a quarterback, could not get them. They have historically made crazy selections. And yesterday, they just did the right thing.
Yes.
They took the best player on the board. And, I'll hear a lot of people going, well, they don't have a quarterback. That guy's going to be good. And at 13, it's the right spot for him. He's going to be really good. So they got Brock Bowers. So they did the right thing. 15 was Leatu Latu, who went to the Colts.
Yep.
I love him. I was talking about him in the fall. I love him. He's got health concerns, but I think that's a steal. First defensive player on the board at 15. Mm-hmm. That's a steal. Seattle got a steal. Byron Murphy, defensive tackle out of Texas. Dallas Turner to Minnesota. I know they traded up again to do it, but they were like, you know what? It's an opportunity. Because of the way the draft fell, these players, this is what I was talking about yesterday, and I'll talk about more about it in a minute, but I said, I have a feeling these edges are going to fall, that Washington ought to seriously consider moving up for that and not a tackle, because once Amarius Mims went 18 to Georgia, I think he was the one they were looking at to try to get to the 20s and then select. Once he went at 18, I knew Washington was in trouble with this plan of getting back into the first round and how much they were going to be willing to move up to get not the best tackles on the board, one that probably needs some work. And Mims is a monster, and I knew they liked him. But at 18, it was a little too rich to move up. Sounds like there weren't many players who wanted to do a deal anyway. Once he was off the board, I kind of knew what the score was going to be. It was unlikely they were going to move up. I will take a quick break. It was one of the questions I asked Adam Peters about as we head into night 2. You'll hear my conversation with him next. Brad Washington Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. So yesterday, like today, starting at 5:30 today, I'm going to be hosting a show for the Commanders on their YouTube channel. It'll be streaming live Facebook, Twitter, X, and also YouTube. We have dual coverage where B. Mitch and Santana Moss and Brian Colbert are out in Detroit at the draft. I'll be in studio with London Fletcher and Logan Paulson, anchoring from the War Room as we get set for rounds 2 and 3. And obviously Washington has the most picks among all the teams left that are drafting. They've got 5, 2 early in the second round and 3 in the third round. We thought possibly that they would trade back into the first round, and I think they were a willing participant, but they couldn't find a seller. And so there's some open questions about what's going to happen today and what positions get addressed, namely tackle. After the first round, though, last night, I did have the opportunity through the Commanders to speak to General Manager Adam Peters, and here are his thoughts after the one and only pick that was made, Jayden Daniels. What brought you to the decision to make him at number 2?
Almost everything. Really everything. Everything he's done on the field, off the field. He's, I don't even know where to start. You start with, the road he's traveled, the adversity he's been through, the adversity he's come out of to become a Heisman Trophy winner. He plays the position as well as anyone in the draft. Plus, he can run better than anyone in the draft. So, and then getting to know him, getting to understand the person that he is, talking to his coaches, and you go all the way back to high school. You go into Arizona State with Herm Edwards, and you go to LSU, Brian Kelly. You go to talk to all the staffers. His personal quarterbacks coach. Everything everybody says about him is just exemplary, and we just we're just thrilled to have him.
Over the past few months, we've been hearing a lot about his work ethic.
Yeah.
Getting kicked out of the building by coaches, he's working too much, all the video work that he was doing, the Oculus work he was doing. What did you learn about his work ethic through this process?
He's second to none. Second to none. Those things are the things you look for. The calling meetings at 5 a.m. in the morning, bringing his teammates with him, staying late, wanting to get better, wanting to find every little edge, doing all the VR work that you just spoke about. Those are things you want. Those are things you want in any position, especially your quarterback. And he doesn't do it so everybody knows that he does it to get better.
And you and Coach Quinn have talked a lot about character as important aspects of players that you want to bring in here. What did you learn about the character of Jayden Daniels through all of this process as well?
Yeah, he's as consistent as they come in terms of just consistent every day, even keeled, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He's incredible off the field, he's clean as can be in terms of just being off the field, and he's a really mature, smart person, treats everybody very well, and his teammates love him.
Nobody knew what you guys were going to do, which is amazing because I think everybody knew what Chicago was going to do at number one. And so once you got to this point, can you kind of take me through the process and getting to the final decision to select Daniels?
Yeah, I think, we try to be process driven in everything we do. So we go through the whole process, see everybody, see all the quarterbacks, but throughout the whole time, it was really easy to fall in love with Jayden right from the beginning. And from the first time I watched him, I couldn't believe how good he was. And then watching him more and more and more, he would do different things at every game. He would do something that would just blow you away. And so everybody came to the decision, but I think everybody came to this decision individually. It wasn't any group thing. And it was unanimous in the building.
And I don't know if easy is the right word for it, but because there were other really good prospects that were coming out at the position. So in the end, how would you describe coming to consensus about Jayden Daniels?
It was pretty clear. That's probably the best way I could put it. Is pretty clear that he was our guy, and there wasn't a whole lot of discussion, and that's a huge compliment because the other quarterbacks that were coming out in this draft are really, really good. They're great people, and they carried a lot of the same characteristics as Jayden did in terms of being great people, great workers, but I think Jayden stood head and shoulders above the rest.
It's interesting that Marcus Mariota's here. He was a number 2 overall pick. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He's been down this path. As you kind of look at this quarterback room and what you hope, I'm sure, is mentorship for him, how do you kind of view that moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus, we brought him in here because we think Marcus can be a starting quarterback, and he has been a starting quarterback. So first and foremost, he's a guy who can win games. He can lead a team. He's won games. He's won playoff games. So you have all that, right? And then you go to the person who Marcus Mariota is, who we've heard about over the years from Oregon throughout his whole NFL career. But to meet him in this building and to see the type of person that he is, he's going to be a great in that room no matter what his role is, and he's just that type of person. We're proud to have him here.
And certainly the long-term obviously goal is to have Jayden become the franchise quarterback for the team at some point. There's a lot of responsibility. You know the drought that's been here at this position. What do you say to him as he kind of walks in the door and takes over as number 2 overall pick quarterback, Washington Commanders?
Yeah, just be yourself. Be yourself. Do what's gotten you here. Be a great teammate, which he's always been. Listen to the vets, and we have full confidence that he's going to be able to handle everything that's thrown at him.
Okay, last thing, tomorrow you've got 5 picks. What can you share about how you're thinking about how to utilize all this draft capital that you have?
Yeah, I think everything we always do is what's best for the Commanders. So whatever opportunities present themselves, whether it's going up, whether it's going back and getting more picks, what we do know is there's a lot of really good players left. And this is a pretty deep draft for the first 2 days, and we have 5 picks to get a lot of really good players tomorrow, so we're excited.
I know Dan Quinn's happy. I saw a quote from him where he said, Jayden Daniels is the kind of player who can steal your soul on 3rd down. So I know you've made your coach happy today. GM Adam Peters, thank you. All right, so that was Adam Peters last night, and I appreciate his time. All right, so it was not a secret that Washington was trying to get back into the first round. Like I said earlier, I think when Amarius Mims went off when he did at 18, I think that started to make it very prohibitive for them to make a move to get back up because they weren't going to take a big swing and try to get up to, 10, 12, whatever, to get like Olu or someone like that, because that was going to cost them their first round pick next year to do it. The only other name that I think was probably one to watch for them, and I'm sure they would have liked to have either slipped or been willing to get, was Jordan Morgan, who the tackle ended up going to Green Bay. I think that that's another player that I think they probably would have been very interested in had it gotten to the point that they had a team that was willing to talk to them about it. But once Mims was off the board, I started to get the feeling this is extremely unlikely. And I'll go back to I threw this out yesterday, and this is the one, if we could do it over, I believe the tackle's a clear necessity for them, and it's going to have to be addressed. And if it's not addressed today, it's going to have to be addressed in free agency, if not both, because the primary candidates went off the board. And it was predictable. Everyone said this is what was going to happen. Yep. But the guys who slipped were the defensive players, all of them. There wasn't one taken until 15 in the draft. And there were a couple edge rushers that got to spots, in my opinion, that became value picks. So I threw this out yesterday, and I knew this wasn't their goal, but I'm like, just the way the board is falling, I would consider a trade back in for an edge. Because you might get a pretty good deal on one of them, not unlike Montez Sweat a few years ago when they moved back into the 20s and got a top-tier player who just happened to be at that spot. And the one that went off the board that got me was when Arizona took Darius Robinson from Missouri. Because he went 27. And he was the one, as the draft was kind of progressing, that I was sitting there telling Logan in London, I'm like, that's the guy I want if he gets into day 2. And if he gets into day 2, I would advocate we move up to try to get him. And I even would have advocated, like I said, you want to get a tackle, but if that's not available, a move up for an edge, especially at that level of talent, at that price point, 27 in the draft, I'm all in for that. So I don't think they were ever going that way, but that's the redo I would have thought about last night.
Yeah, I think the main problem was I don't think anyone wanted to move out of the first round. I think everyone had. I think everyone.
That's what the message was.
Yeah. I feel like, and so there wasn't really an easy way to do that because everyone I think was at peace with saying, well, if we move down a few spots, there's still this guy that we like. But I think they were at the point, everyone in that second half of the first round, that was going, I don't really want to trade out so we don't get a top tier talent at some position because first corner didn't go off the board until the 20s or something like that too. So yeah.
And it's the Eagles.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
The reporting on the Eagles was they wanted to move up to get this guy. Yep. And as then the board fell, they didn't even have to do it.
Right.
It's the worst.
Yeah. 100%.
It's the worst.
It is. And so I think that's where everyone fell. It was like, we can move down a few spots, but we're not pulling out of the first round. And unfortunately with the Commanders, that just, that doesn't work when you don't have the extra first round pick.
So it's interesting you bring up corner because, all right, all these tackles went off the board. The team couldn't move up to get one of them. There are still some decent ones, but they're more projects. Like the guy that Dallas got at 29, Tyler Guyton, he's a monster, but he's a major project. So now we're getting to this point where you go, are we going to overdraft a player that we can't plug in, even though we have this immediate need? And I've been talking about this for a while, and as we've kind of gotten through the draft, I'm like, corner is a need here. I think they need a starter. I still think that they're missing a starter. Mm-hmm. Well, there's some really good options there at that position. So while I kind of projected all along, one of these second round picks is either going to be used on a tackle or it's going to be used to move back in the first round to get a tackle, I'm not so sure anymore, because if they think that the tackles aren't warranted at that high of a price, maybe you go after a higher tier corner at this point. So I'm watching that position closely tonight. If they go in that direction, there are really good corners. They're probably going to have their option of 2 or 3 of them when they pick at 36. So I think that's a position to watch tonight, and obviously tackle as well, because it has to be addressed. So I think they're going to pick one. It's logical they'll pick one early, but I don't know that there's a player there that warrants picking that early. So they may go a different direction and use maybe on an edge, maybe on a corner, maybe there's some very good speed receivers. Maybe it might surprise you on a receiver here earlier tonight, but I think their options are now open, and tackle may end up being something they have to deal with after the draft to go find a veteran starter to pair with Trent Scott, Cornelius Lucas, etc., to get through a year, because clearly the plan was to try to get one and it just didn't happen last night.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break. Let's preview the Caps next. Bram Watch the Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Bram Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. We're getting set for rounds 2 and 3 tonight of the NFL Draft, where Washington has 5 picks. That's the most of any team in the NFL. They and Arizona were the only two that had 6 in the top 100, but Arizona used 2 of theirs in the first round last night, and they did well. Marvin Harrison Jr. and the edge, Darius Robinson out of Missouri. That's a heck of a first-round draft for them. Potentially, Marvin Harrison might be the rookie of the year. I mean, if Caleb or Jayden don't break out and have C.J. Stroud like first seasons, he might be the rookie of the year. So they got a heck of a draft there that started up there. I do want to mention one thing before I get into the Capitals too. I knew something was up with Joel Embiid. There was something wrong with his eye the other day when he fell in New York, and then it came out because it became very noticeable that he's got Bell's palsy. I do know a couple people in my lifetime that have had this. I won't name them, but I know that they've had it. It's inexplicable. No one understands how it comes on. It can take weeks, sometimes months, to just clear itself. It is some kind of weakness in the muscles in the face, and it shouldn't affect him. And it obviously didn't because he scored 50 points last night. But it shouldn't affect his ability to play. It's just probably more than anything going to be kind of a nuisance and a little embarrassing. I don't think it affects your vision at all, but it does affect your ability to kind of control the muscles on the side of your face. So I feel for him. Like, he's got this unsteady knee. He clearly, this stuff matters to him, and now he's got this going on, and then to put 50 in, I mean, that's an all-time performance, honestly. Like, I think because of everything else going on, I don't think people are realizing what he did last night. Like, that's an literal all-time performance. He's on this knee that is barely holding together. His team is, hanging on for dear life. They need him or they have no chance. Now he's diagnosed with Bell's palsy, and he scores 50 points in a must-win game 3. Come on. Like, that's an all-time performance by a player. It was amazing.
No,
really.
It's definitely a built different type performance too.
Yes.
Like even Knicks fans are like, damn it, like, come on, it's supposed to be ours. And of course he goes off for one of his best games in the playoffs. Yeah, it was awesome.
It was pretty crazy. Okay, here we go, Jim. Speaking of seasons on the line. All right, let's get to so Caps Rangers game 3 tonight. First home game of the series. They lost the first 2.
Yep.
They'll play Sunday as well.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll be talking about the season being at bare minimum alive on Monday. And best case scenario, we're tied 2-2. We get back into it.
Correct.
Let's start with the most important part of this. I did see that both Nick Jensen and Rasmus Sandin are trending towards possibly playing this weekend.
They were both wearing normal contact jerseys again today.
That's a good sign.
So yes, they were not in the non-contact. Do we get both of them tonight? I'm thinking absolutely not. Maybe one of them though. I could definitely see that happening tonight. We'll see. The other little wrinkle that is going to happen is Ivan Miroshnichenko is going to draw back into the lineup, which I love. They need the young legs, they need the speed, they need the skill position players.
Why wasn't he in games 1 and 2? What was the reasoning behind that?
So they went with their normal lineup that got them into the playoffs, which basically meant Nicolas Aube-Kubel was going to stay in the bottom 6. And that's because Kubel is just a veteran player, a little more steady, but he hasn't been good through the first 2 games. And you have to kind of just go with the skill.
He had a couple of embarrassing shifts in that game too. Like really bad, embarrassing shifts.
And when you're Aube-Kubel, you're basically just trying to not get noticed. Like you kind of have to act as a defenseman. If you get mentioned, it means something's going wrong. And you're exactly right. He was not good, and when he was showing up, it was because he wasn't good. And I think, honestly, if you're Carberry, you're looking for scoring. And Miroshnichenko, while he didn't score, we saw spurts of it where he was, dynamic at times. So you have to hope that maybe because he hasn't been in the lineup that, he has a couple of moments where maybe he can get a puck on net and maybe someone cleans it up in front. And I don't mind this at all. The other part of this that, I don't want to be like bleak or anything, but look, you've got 2 games left, at a bare minimum left here, right? Get the kid some experience, because if we found out anything about those first 2 games, it's that Connor McMichael and Hendrix Lapierre and Alexei Protas look ready, that they look like they're a part of the future. See if Miroshnichenko can match that and see if he looks good too, because the other 3 have looked really, really good in those first 2 games.
Okay. How you feel about Lindgren? You feel still really confident? I mean, I haven't seen him give up bad goals. That hasn't happened. He nearly did something really embarrassing the other day in the midst of that game, but whatever. I mean, if we need him to be great, are you feeling as if there's a possibility that he could pull a rabbit out of a hat for us?
So I there's kind of like 2 schools of thoughts here that I have on Lindgren, and it's that, one, he's the one that's gotten you here, and he deserves to kind of play this out. He's at the best.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm not for a second insinuating they should go to Kemper at all. But what I'm saying here is what's clearly here is he's got to steal some for them, obviously.
Correct. Like I joked about it at the start, but I still kind of stand by it. He has to get a shutout for them to win a game here. And that has to come in this game tonight or on Sunday. And so I don't think you're going to make a change. But, man, I still go back to that game where the Caps lost in Carolina, and Darcy Kemper was really, really good. And so I think if the armor cracks here and he lets in a soft goal, I do think you kind of at least need to think about it. I'm not saying go for it. And honestly, you're probably dead in the water if Lindgren looks bad anyways. But he needs to make a really good save here and there. Like, he had the one great one against Kreider on the power play in game 2. But other than that, he needed to save one of those other ones, and he didn't. And he's far from the biggest problem, but if they have a chance to win, it's going to be because he makes an insane save, because honestly, the defense in front of him is just so sewn together right now with guys that shouldn't even be in the lineup. So, yes, he absolutely has to be better, and I know that's asking quite a bit from him. But look, that's how they got here. They got here because he was the outlier. He was the guy that, shouldn't have been this good, and he was this good. He needs to make a huge save or two. Not just a good one, but like a game-changing one, like Bobrovsky the other night. Like, not that good, but like something along those lines to really wake up the crowd and really get the team instilled some extra confidence in it too.
I did see people did go up to Ovechkin and go, "What's up, dude?"
Yep.
So that happened. He answered it the way he answered it. This has been the weirdest year ever. This is how he looked at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And for 2 months. And we're like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. And then he turned into the goal-scoring, more active Ovechkin during the last couple of months. And then it's like the light switch went off again.
Yeah.
He has one shot on goal. He had a ghastly error that led to a goal the other day. He's been somewhat of a non-factor. He's shooting, when he is on the power play, he's shooting from odd parts of the ice. Like, I don't know what's up with him. And I don't think he's the end-all, be-all, but he can't be that. They have no shot if he's that. He can't be that.
No, I mean, not unlike Lindgren. They're not going to win games if Lindgren makes big saves. They're not going to win big games if Alex Ovechkin has 0 or 1 shot on net. It's just not going to happen. He is such a distraction, too, that when he's a threat, the Rangers have to worry about him, and that just hasn't happened here. And, I don't know what it is. You could always chalk it up to an injury. Like, we might find out afterwards if something's up with him, but it fell off so fast with him that I'm kind of baffled at how it did, because he was just he was so dynamic. And then about 2 weeks ago is when it fell off. And granted, he was still scoring every now and then. It wasn't like he completely fell off. I don't know what it is. I will say this, though, and I commend him for it. He's back-checked. He's worried about his defense a little bit. I know he's not fast, but he has done that. He's also laid down the hits, too. So he's contributing in other ways. It's just the biggest way possible. He's not that, dynamic in that. And I wonder this, too. Like, I've said it to you through the first 2 games. Connor McMichael is playing with him. At some point, too, you kind of have to go to Connor McMichael and go, play with the other guys, because you're really dynamic here, and that guy's holding you back a little bit. Like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation that Ovechkin's holding someone back, but McMichael was the best player on the team last game, along with Tom Wilson. At some point, you have to go all in with the guys that are working for you, and so I think that's another factor that Carberry has to work with tonight is put your best players out there. I still point to the end of Game 2 where how was McMichael not out there? It was kind of baffling to me that he didn't have the best players that were during that game out there in their most critical time. I hope, Carberry learned from that a little bit. So even if Ovechkin's not effective, it doesn't mean you have to put him out there, all the time either. I think that's what I'm getting at here is Carberry needs to worry about winning more than, putting Ovechkin out there just to, hit a quota of ice time.
Okay. I know you don't make picks anymore.
Yep.
I'll just ask you this one. We're not getting swept, right? You think we're going to win at least one of these 2?
I think they are going to win one.
Okay.
No.
That was a bit of a pause. Okay.
No. They're going to win one of these, I think, also because you have to actually look at the home games both of these teams played. The Caps beat them both at home. The Rangers beat the Caps at their 2 at home, not including the playoffs. And the Caps have actually played really well against the Rangers at home over the last couple of years. They're winning one of these 2, I think. And honestly, too, as much as I, have, my gripes about Game 2 and some of the decisions, they played the game we said they should. They got shots on net. Connor McMichael played really well. We said Lindgren needed one more big save. If he makes one more big save, it's a 1-goal game there, or a tie game, honestly. And so I think if they come out and do that same exact game plan, we're going into a tie game tonight in the 3rd period, and hopefully they can, work some magic and win a game. I think they win one. I don't see this team getting swept. They have really risen to the occasion when they've had to. So I hope we're talking about, games 5 and 6 happening, that we come back on Monday and it's tied 2-2. But I do think they're going to win one, whether it's tonight or Sunday. I couldn't tell you, but I think they're going to win one. I don't think they're getting swept.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm getting ready. I'm getting my game face on. I'm ready for the
Jayden
Rangers.
who? Who's that?
Yeah, Jayden who? All right, we'll take a quick break. John Keim's going to join us next. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Getting set for rounds 2 and 3 tonight. Washington with 5 picks, 2 of them early, 36 and 40. And, of course, they made their pick of a franchise quarterback, the number 2 overall pick, Jayden Daniels, as John Keim from ESPN. John Keim report joins me now. We didn't know what they were going to do. They apparently knew what they were going to do. Adam Peters basically admitted that last night. I want to give them a tip of the cap of keeping it under wraps for as long as they did, because it seems like the decision, at least on their end, was actually made far more in advance than it ever got out.
Well, in his mind, what they kept saying, basically, he was a leader. He was on the top of the mountain. And if you remember the game as a kid, push the guy off the mountain, whatever it is. Like, you have to push him off the mountaintop, and nobody did. So I think each step of the way, clearly listening to him now, each step of the way, he was the guy. But you still have to finish the process. So even when I was talking to people last week who some of them are involved in the process and they didn't have any idea. They might know, well, thoughts on this, thoughts on that, but they had no idea what he ultimately was going to do. And so I think the rest of the building found out last night. So, so they did do a great job keeping it wraps. And
beyond a tight ship.
It's an amazing tight ship. So, that's how closely guarded they were. And so props to them. I think as you and I talked a lot, everything pointed to this. Logic, watching the games took you to this. Talking to other people in the league took you to this. But, and I would always say, and you say, until you hear from one of those people who are making the decision, you don't know for sure. So good for them for keeping it.
Well, yeah, the example is Atlanta. You don't know what anybody's going to really do. I can't believe they picked a quarterback at number 8. That's crazy, right? It logically doesn't make any sense for needs and what they've done. And so that's why you have to hold off and wait. And they were very tight-lipped about the whole thing. In the end, though, I'm with you. And we talked about this for weeks. I just kept landing on, if you just watch them play, this is not a hard decision. How are you going to turn that down? He's an electric athlete. The other 2 players, McCarthy and May, or Penix for that matter, they may end up being very good players, but they don't have that skill set. And he's put it on display in a way that very, very few have over the last quarter century. How could they turn that down?
You couldn't. So you're right. And I think there's a lot of Drake May fans out there, and I hate to tell them, I don't even think he was the second guy on their board for them as far as the choices here. J.J. McCarthy, I do believe, if they had gone in a different direction, it would have been J.J. McCarthy. Both those guys, though, need a lot of work, and I think May in particular needs a lot of work with the footwork. This kid's more advanced in that area as well, and I think he's played more, he's had a chance to work on more of it, and he's done it. So, but you're right, you watch the tape, this is what I would go back to, because early in the process, Bram, we talked about this, there were a lot of things I liked about Drake May early on, because you're more familiar with him, et cetera, et cetera. But the more I watched of Daniels, the difference to me was you'd see May have good plays in a game, but you'd see this kid carry a team or just have huge games. I know he had good talent around him at receiver, but he was helping them out too. And some of those balls that he's throwing down the field on the fades and all that are pinpoint accuracy. That's what they're looking for as well. So it's the ability to make people miss on those with his legs, but it's the deep ball accuracy and his growth as a passer that to me make the difference overall.
Okay, and now that we're at this point, and maybe this is a better question to start talking about once they start practicing, which is actually going to be pretty soon. This is who Cliff Kingsbury is working with. So, I know a lot of people made the leap of heard air raid. No, Drake May thrived in it, at least under Phil Longo, and went, well, that's probably the direction they're going to go. This is a different athlete, different skill set. What's just your general idea of how Cliff Kingsbury is going to think about utilizing Jayden Daniels in year 1?
That's a good question, because I don't know. Because we haven't talked to Cliff, and we don't know what his offense is going to look like here. What I do think they'll do is they're going to lower the pressure on this kid and remove the burden from him. They did not do that with Sam Howell last year. The burden was all on Sam Howell because of scheme, because of philosophy, and because of poor play calling in that regard, like too much throwing the ball. You're not going to see that with this kid. I think you're going to see a heavier reliance on just incorporating him and letting him develop as a passer, but the run game. So I think that's one way Cliff Kingsbury can help him is just with the run game. As far as the passing go, the one thing that I'll be curious to see is, in talking to people who know him well and have worked with him, there's a lot more with his footwork he can do on certain route combinations that you did not see at LSU. So one of the things that when people talk about, oh, well, this guy's got close to a ceiling, well, we don't know that because there's other things that people feel he can do that he didn't show at LSU, just in terms of drops and footwork as a passer, that can open up the pass game for these guys. So what they, I think you'll see a lot of 2 tight end sets in the pass game especially, and I think so you need to get another tight end in here to help Zach Ertz with that, someone who can catch. I think that can help with the rookie quarterback as well, and Austin Eckler. And here's the other thing that came up in the press conference, Bram, that I thought was interesting, and they are really, really making it, trying to allow this kid to slowly integrate into being a face of the franchise. And even like from a leadership position, they're not asking him to come in here and take charge right away. He said that's why they have Zach Ertz. That's why they have Austin Eckler on offense to help with the leadership stuff that can reduce that burden on him too. Come in here, do your job, and grow and develop.
Yeah, I think Mariota figures into that too, at least from a mentorship point of view. Same path, 2nd overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner, interesting quarterback room now, and probably some stories to share with him about his path and his journey to get to this point. All right. The other thing that we kind of expected to happen was they have to get a tackle. I thought they were going to trade back into the first round. You have to have a willing participant, and the run on tackles, as was predicted by most of the people that did mock drafts, did occur. And once Amarius Mims went off the board before 20, I think that to me was probably the one they were watching to see if he would get into the 20s. He didn't. And once that happened, it started to become unlikely, and then obviously didn't happen. So are you still of the mindset that they're going to take a tackle here early in the second round, or have so many gone off the board that the ones that are available don't warrant that high of a pick now?
I think there are only a couple that might be tempting at this spot. I think the other interesting thing here, Bram, is the other positions that have fallen, cornerback in particular. So it's another premium position and it's an area of need. Maybe not quite as big a need as left tackle because you don't have a starting left tackle right now. So you absolutely have to go get a guy. They have said that Cornelius Lucas, they feel comfortable with him starting, but even the previous staff, they liked him too, but not for a long time, right? Get him 4 or 5 games and then get someone in there who's your guy. So there are some tackles that are interesting in the kid from Yale, Kieran, and it's from Yale. Kieran and it's Armageddon or something like that. I apologize, I'm butchering the name. But he's a guy to watch maybe lower than this point. Roger Rosengarten is another interesting guy to me. Do you get him here in the second round? Could you trade back one of those picks in the second round, get up a couple more things, and get him there? Maybe that's where you take him. I know there was some talk, some teams, I think were kind of looking at him maybe at the end of the first round. So he's a guy that has kind of a wide range. I don't know where they see him, but he's a guy that could come in and play left tackle. And so I think he'll be a name to watch. But yeah, I mean, the value though right now is heavy on corner at 36 or 40 because there are a lot there.
Yeah, the way we expected this to play out, we knew they'd take a quarterback, and then the idea was to trade back in. There was a run on tackles. There was no willing participant, or they weren't going to be willing to pay the price to go to the length that they would have had to go to get them. Now they're sitting there, 8 tackles went off the board, so all of a sudden, I'm not sure that the value is there any longer. I'm with you on corner, and it's funny, we've been talking about they're going to get a tackle, and they're probably going to get a tight end, and an edge rusher, if it slips to that point, would probably be something of interest. And, I guess corner will just be kicked, that can will get kicked down the road. I'm arguing that I still think they need a starter there too. Well, that's the value spot all of a sudden, and there's probably a couple of them that are going to pop up at 36. So that to me is, I got all eyes on that. I didn't see that one coming. I do think it's a need, but I agree with you. The top end talent at 36 or 40 is probably that position for them.
Absolutely, and it's funny because they did bring guys in for that visit. Most of the guys they brought in, though, would be end of third, fourth round type guys. the guys that are available are guys that you thought might go in the first round, and they fit. Some of them fit what they want to do in terms of the press man coverage. The kid from Iowa, Cooper DeJean, is a guy that would fit that mold, and a guy who's made some plays on the ball, which is what they want. So if he's still there, it would be very interesting to see what they do. But they absolutely have to come out of here with the tackle. We know that, and you know who else knows that? They know that. So I think they're going to work hard to get that, but what I don't think they'll do is force the pick to fill a need. I think that's where you make mistakes. You have to get a guy, but if you have like one of those corners that you say, this guy by far is a guy that can help us, and we have him higher slotted here, blah, 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 then you got to take him. And I think having the luxury of 2 picks so close together gives you the ability to do that.
I do think they're going to get another receiver at some point, too. I hadn't earmarked it really for high in the draft, but I'm going to flag a name. Ladd McConkey's available. He's a very good talent, son of Phil McConkey, longtime NFL veteran. He could play slot. He is a deep threat as well. If he's sitting at 36, I know nobody's thinking receiver that high for them, but there's good talent at that position group too. I'd argue they need another one. And like what San Francisco did the other night, they don't need another receiver, but they took one because they thought it was too good to pass up at that point in time. If that's the best player on the board, that name wouldn't surprise me early in the second round for them.
The way you build a good team is by drafting good players. You don't draft, and what they'll say too is you draft good players, you go to free agency for need. So if that's the guy that they feel like, hey, that's the best value here, this is the best player on our board, etc., then that's who you take, because that's the only way you build a good roster is by doing that. And sometimes in the moment it's like, why would you do that? And then you realize, oh, well, this guy's really good. And plus the other thing is you never know when something does become a need. So if that's who they decide, I'd be a little bit surprised, only because I think there's value at other spots there too. I think tight end's another one to watch. Receiver is deep. Tight end is not as deep. But I don't know if like Jared Wiley might be a guy to watch in that range, but is he a guy that you take at 36 or 40 for the value? I don't know. You could, again, trade back one of those picks, get more picks, get them maybe later in the second if you wanted to, or you wait till the third to get one of the other tight ends. But yeah, receivers on that list. And again, if somebody's there, that's how you win. You get good players, period.
Edge is obviously another spot too. And I was talking about this yesterday, and I didn't think they would do this, but I thought the opportunity would be there, and it played out that way. They have starters. They don't have a front end player. I think that they're going to be looking for that, whether it's this year or next year. But as the draft started to play out, we knew a lot of quarterbacks were going to go early, 6 of them. We knew a lot of receivers were going to go early. We knew a lot of tackles would go early. It had never happened in the modern draft that it took that long to get to a defensive player, and then all of a sudden they start going off the board. Well, some of these high-end edge rushers, defensive tackles that are premium positions, suddenly were in value spots. For me, if there was a do-over of trade back in, knowing, I thought they could have targeted 2 positions. That tackles the need, but if the thing falls the way everyone's suggesting it might, and there isn't an Amarius Mims or somebody who falls through the cracks, well, you could go after this Missouri guy at 28. You could go after Chop Robinson in the 20s if you like him. I thought that was the plan, maybe not for them, but in my mind, that was the value proposition for them if they weren't going to get a tackle to trade back in last night.
The hard part with that would be it leaves you with little to do elsewhere, and you still would need the tackle. And then how are you going to address that need, depending on what you have to, because you're going to have to give up something obviously to get up there. That's the one question, be like, what do you give up to get that guy? But they clearly want to get an edge guy, because those some of the high Chop Robinson came in, Marshawn Nealon, who is still out there, also came in for a visit. In the top 30s, I think mattered to them. So those are a couple guys to watch. So my only question with that scenario would have been, can you still then address the tackle? And can you, so that's what I would say. But they want that guy. And it is, 2 of the 3 ends they signed in the offseason are free agents after this year. They need some young guys who are talented. They have 2 guys from last year, but they didn't look like they were necessarily future starters. Rotational guys, fine, but you need some high-end guys that can play in Dan Quinn's system. Both the guy you said, Darius Robinson, would have been perfect. Chop Robinson would be really good too. So I would have had no problem if they get those guys. But then what else are you not addressing if you did that?
I think largely though, like the point is this, and they were never going to be able to check off all the boxes this year with this particular draft, which is why I think we've turned around to, I didn't think corner would be the move today, but it might be the move today. I didn't think edge would be something that you would go back in the first round for, but maybe they should have. Like they clearly still need a tackle. What are you going to do about it? Is there a high enough caliber player that you think you could get that could be starting by midseason if Cornelius Lucas was your starter? Is that person now available, or do you have to bridge for a year on the other side of the draft and free agency? So I'm kind of getting to the point now where I go, all right, they do need a corner, they do need an edge, they do need a tackle, they do need a tight end. I think these things could be addressed, but I'm also starting to fall into the category of, you know what, if the best player on the board is a receiver, go for it at this point. Let's not try to get too cute with this whole thing.
Well, that's why I say you build it. What their job this year is to build a good roster. Like this is not a team that's built to win now and contend for a title now, et cetera. The point of this, they're in the first year of the regime. You get good players. If McConkey's the guy, bring him in and don't worry about what anybody else out here says because, oh, you needed this. Yeah, you did, but you also really there's not a lot of blue chip talent on this roster, and there hasn't been for a while. If you have guys that can help improve that, bring them in because that's, again, I can't stress out, that's how you win. It's simple. Get good players. Now, again, where's the left tackle coming from? But you have to, even going back a couple years, they found their left tackle after the draft in Charles Leno. He was not a Pro Bowler, but he was solid for them, and he was not the reason they lost 13 games last year. Oh, there are a lot of reasons for that, but it wasn't just because, well, the left tackle did this. Great, no, but fine, right? And so can you get that guy afterwards if you don't address it now? Or even if you get a tackle, let's say in the late third, you're not sure they're going to come in and start, you're still going to have to be looking for another guy maybe to come in and start at some point maybe.
All right, here's the all-time, and it's impossible for them to answer this because these people weren't here when it happened, but they acquired, in all this discussion now of what are we going to do with 36 and 40, whatever plan we thought they were going to have with it has been complicated now by the way the draft fell. They got pick 40 from the Bears for trading Montez Sweat. They need an edge rusher. They have a lot of cap room. I think if you ask Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, who were not in charge when that was happening at the time, would you do that over? I wonder what they would say to that today. Is 40 worth him at this point?
That's a good question because you're right. And I think, it's funny because when they made the trade, the Bears weren't very good. And you're looking at like maybe having, instead of the 40th pick, maybe the 33rd pick or something like that, or 34th pick. But they need a pass rushing end, and that's Montez Sweat. So, I think Dan Quinn would have liked that guy. But the other part, though, is if let's say you get a Marshawn Nealon or someone like that, and Montez is really good. It's hard for me to go there because I think he's really good. But let's say if you get Marshawn Nealon and let's say he's doing really well and kind of puts up comparable numbers eventually, but now you're paying a guy in a rookie contract for 4 years. That's a big edge as well. So then you don't have to spend at those positions like you're going to have to eventually, and you can then fill your roster with other guys in other spots. That's what this draft to me is a big plus for them because you can get premium guys, quarterback, left tackle, corner, edge rusher, and they're on rookie deals. That's a massive benefit. If these guys hit, that's a massive benefit.
Okay, how would you describe a good night for them with 5 picks here? What do you kind of picture happening over tonight that would, because the other part of the draft is obviously they don't even have a 4th round pick, so it's going to be low picks, 2 5s and a 7. Tonight's the night where we figure out outside of Jayden Daniels, is this that draft that is going to literally kind of change the structure of the team moving forward? It could be a really, a humongous moment in the franchise to kind of reshape their roster. What does a good night for the Commanders look like tonight?
Tackle, corner, tight end, edge.
All starters.
All starters, all guys who are future Pro Bowlers. No, but I do think like those are the positions to address, and I do think the hard part is going to be tackle, because I don't know. I know they brought Rosengarten in. I heard they like him, and I keep bringing his name up because he's one of the few guys I think that might project to a higher level that you could say, okay, he can go in and be a starter. Day one, I don't know, but getting a guy that can play that spot, getting a corner that you're like, okay, he fits that system. He's a big guy. He's a physical corner. Getting that guy in here because they need that guy. They don't have. I don't know who your surefire starters are at corner. So get a guy there. Tight end would be good because I think, again, they want to have that. They signed Zach Ertz. There are questions about the guys afterwards, outside of John Bates as a blocker, but they need another guy who can be a pass-catching threat, and I think that's where they'll go within the third round or so. But yeah, addressing those positions if possible. To me, that's a really good night. But I would always say, like, you can't force it. If the guy isn't what you want, get a good player.
What are you doing Sunday? Going to sleep?
I'm just worried about getting through today and being able to drive home 45 minutes at 1 a.m. or whatever it is. So, but no, Sunday actually, I'm flying up. Well, we're going up to see my son. But I'll be bringing my laptop and working and doing all that. So it's not going to be I'm getting up early, for God's sake. I mean, really early, even for me. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, as always. John Keim, ESPN, John Keim Report. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital.